All right, let's go ahead and get started. You should see in front of you my screen, my computer. I have a surface already built. This is the one that we built in the previous webinar. I've went ahead and turned off the points, the survey shot points, and created a new points group that has all the centerline shots, so that it's a little easier for me to judge where I think the alignment for the grass waterway should go. So to do that, all I did is I went over to the points group over in the prospector, and I created a new points group that I called FL for flow line, and I included, oh sorry, hold on, if I go to properties of FL, all I did was I made sure that I included all the points that had an FL and a CL at the start of the name. So you can do that too. You certainly don't have to, but it makes it easier to lay out your first alignment. Okay, so let's get started. If you have the step-by-step notes or the guidelines in front of you, you can kind of follow down the list, and hopefully I stay in order. This first part, create an alignment. The first thing we need to do is we need to draw a regular polyline. Okay, so up at the Home tab, you have this curve button here that says Polyline. Go ahead and push that. And I want to start at the outlet. It just makes it easier when you do your alignment. You can start at the top end and go down, but it makes it easier to do the alignment. You don't have to reverse any of the flow, or not the flow, but you don't have to reverse any of the stationing once the alignment's created. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom in to my flow line of the culvert to where the grass waterway is going to outlet. And I'm going to make sure I turn my snap on. And for this kind of work, you really only need to have your node snap on. You can have this other stuff on, but when you're drawing up this polyline, it makes it easier if you don't have it snapping everywhere when you move your cursor around. So I'm just going to turn on the node for this first one and snap it. And then for the rest of them, I'm going to turn it off because I'm not going to go point to point. I'm going to straighten out this waterway as best I can. And again, this is based on your all experience. If you like straightening out different waterways, the straighter the better. It's easier to lay out and things like that. But for this waterway, sorry, I'm going in and out. But for this waterway, I'm going to go ahead and draw a straight line somewhere right here and make a curve down this way, maybe right there, and click. And I'm going to finish the waterway at the top end, well, somewhere over here. About right there is fine. It just depends on what your situation is and where your waterway should start and end. But I could keep going if I, for whatever reason, had to continue on the waterway down here, but I'm not going to do that for this. So there's my polyline. Just a regular old polyline right now. The next step is to turn it into an alignment, and to do that I go up to the ribbon, and there's this button here that says alignment. Go ahead and click that, and then click create alignment from objects, and then I want to select the polyline that I just drew, and I can right click or I can hit enter after I've selected the polyline. Now it's asking me a question, you can see down in the command line, as to whether the direction's right. And how you know is if you look somewhere in the middle, you'll see this little black arrow. I don't know if I can, yeah, it's not letting me zoom in right now, but there's a black arrow that's pointing on this polyline, and it's pointing upstream. Since my outlet's down here, it's pointing this way, which means it's upstream, what that's telling me is when it starts at station 00, it's going to start that station out here at the outlet, which is how we usually do our waterways up in Area 1. So that's okay. If for whatever reason this arrow was pointing the other way and I wanted to change it, I could just type in R and hit enter and it would reverse the direction. Okay, but in this case it's okay. I'm just going to hit enter. I'll get this dialog box at the top. I can name the alignment. So I'll just call this waterway 1 for this one. I want to make sure that the type is centerline because this alignment is going to be the center line of our waterway. I want to make sure my alignment style is the ODNR DSWR. Again, I've created my own CAD template before we got switched to ODA, so you'll notice this This has several ODNR styles, but they'll still work all the same. The alignment label set, I want to, again, be ODNR, DSWR. And down here at the bottom, depending on how your defaults are in CAD, these two boxes will either be checked or unchecked. Just make sure that you uncheck the add curves between tangents and you check mark the erase existing entities. Basically, the add curves between tangents will take the sharp turns that I drew in the polyline and will add curves to it, which is fine, other than your spacing will be a little bit off and it'll be a little bit difficult to lay out in the field. I just like doing straight sharp kerns and sticking a flag right there at the sharp kern and let the contractor put the curves in as he needs to. So we're going to take the curves out, and this box below here that says erase existing entities, basically all that means is it's going to erase this polyline, and the only thing that'll be here will be the alignment, which is not a polyline. You won't be able to add lines to it. You can stretch it or make it smaller, you just won't be able to change it as you would a polyline. So I'm going to go ahead and hit OK. And it doesn't look like much has changed. If I blew the scale up a little bit, you can see, but I'm going to zoom in. Actually, let me turn off the points so it's a little easier to see. Let's go to, again, properties of the points group and select the no display, move it to the top, hit OK. OK. Okay, there you can see the black line still there. It's no longer a polyline though. It's now an alignment, and you can see it has these stationing every so often on it. Let me blow it up a little bit so it's a little easier to see. There you go. You can see the 500, 400, 300. And again, it's starting at the outlet at the culvert is station 0 plus 0, 0. And it automatically finds the end of the alignment down here, which is 1150 something. So, and I can take this alignment and I can stretch it. If I didn't like where it was, I can move it over here, or I can move it there, move it shorter, longer, whatever I wanted to do. But this can be changed throughout the process. So for now, we can leave it there, and if we have to adjust later on, we can do that. So that's it for creating an alignment. Again, fairly simple. I'm gonna, well, I won't delete it, but I'll go ahead and draw another polyline just to go through the steps again. If you're following along on the computer, you can try to do this as I'm doing it the second time if you haven't already. Basically draw a polyline to wherever you want it to go. Hit enter or escape. Go up to the alignment button. Hit create alignment from objects. Select the 3D polyline. Sorry, 2D polyline, not 3D. Make sure that the arrow is in the right direction, pointing upstream. Hit enter. Name your waterway. Waterway 2. Make sure your type's right. Make sure your styles are where you want them. Uncheck the add curves between tangents. Make sure that the bottom box is checked and hit OK. And there you have another alignment. I'm going to delete that one. That was just an example. Okay. The next step is to create a profile along the alignment, which is typically when we think of drawing a profile, you're actually going to draw a line, but that's not what this means. This is going to create elevation data along the alignment that you won't see until you draw the profile view. So it's kind of different to think about. It's not a profile line. You're just creating the elevation data that goes with the ground surface profile. So this has to be done before you can draw a profile view. The first step is to go up into the ribbon, click Profile, and create Surface Profile. And this doesn't have to be done in the ribbon. Any of these steps that I'm doing here where I'm pushing the buttons in the ribbon, there should be a command in the bottom command line you can read, you can type it in. If you don't like pushing all the ribbon buttons, you can type in commands, and that's perfectly fine. Okay, in this dialog box, I want to select the alignment that I just created, which is Waterway 1. If I wouldn't have deleted the second one I did, it would have said Waterway 2 down here, and I would have to pick between the two. I want to make sure that the surface selected is the ground surface that we created in the previous webinar. You might have several other surfaces on here. You might have a LiDAR surface, different things like that. Just make sure you're selecting the surface you want to physically design from. In this case, it's the points EG. And it's fairly simple. You just hit the add button. And you'll see that it added a profile item down in the profile list. Okay. The other thing I want to do, for designing a grass waterway, you want to have a low bank so that you know how deep you should put the first profile line. I don't know of a way to create a low bank line, but I know a way to add the offsets or the both left and right bank data. And to do that, it's fairly simple. I'm just going to make sure that the sample offsets is checked and type in 20 and hit add. Then type in -20 and hit add. And these 20s and -20s, basically what it means is it's going to go out 20 feet left or right of the bank, depending on if it's positive or negative, and it's going to go that far out, and then it's going to create a profile out there, and that will simulate the bank. Now you'll have to know approximately what kind of width that you might be dealing with, and that's based on experience. So typically 40-foot waterway is what we deal with. So a half width is going to be 20 foot, so that's why I chose positive 20 and -20. If you had a 32-foot wide waterway, then you would choose 16. I want to make sure before I hit OK that I change the style of my left and right bank. The positive value is going to indicate the right bank looking upstream, and so I want to make sure that I click down here, click the style, and change it to right sample profile. Click OK, and then change the -20 offset to left sample profile, and click OK. Okay. Now, the step after that one says click OK, and the profile will be created. You won't see anything. I can do this, and I will do this. The other thing you can do, and I'll do it when I go through this again, is you can go ahead and draw the profile view right now. But I'll go ahead and follow the steps and click OK. And it may come up with this dialog box saying an action was completed. And just make sure you check mark and get out of it. Okay, so you didn't see anything happen on the screen. There's nothing inside the model space that might make you think, hey, what happened? It must not have worked. Well, it did work. You just can't physically see what's going on until you draw the profile view. Okay, to do that, let me flip my notes here. I'm going to go up in the ribbon, and I'm going to click the profile view button, and I'm going to select create profile view. And you'll get this dialog box that pops up. Make sure that you have the same alignment selected. You can name your profile view, and I'll just call this Waterway 1 profile. And this will appear in the title above the grid that is developed. Make sure. Okay. Change the style. Again, everything I use is OD and RDSWR that I created myself. If you have your own style that you like to use, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to use this one or that one. That's just what I do. You can create your own style if you're more experienced with CAD, and that's fine. I'm going to hit next, and it'll take you through a lot of dialog boxes. I have mine defaulted set up that I can go ahead and click this button down here that says create profile view, and it'll create that profile view automatically. I just have to select in the model space. Well, let's go through here, and I'll kind of explain what some of this stuff is. This box here, basically it'll explain the staging that you want to create your profile view. So for some reason, if you only wanted your profile view to go from station 0+00 to, say, 600, then you would have to change this down here to user specified range and then just type in 600 on the right. But we're not going to do that, and we typically don't do that for these type of projects. So just leave it to automatic. It'll be the full width. Hit next. This is saying the height of the profile view. So if you have a 10-foot change between one end of the grass waterway to the other, you want to make sure that you have at least 10 foot of difference between the two heights. You really don't want to make it any bigger than that, though. I mean, you might go a couple feet below and above what your range of elevation fall is. To do that, you can just click the the user specified one, and you can change it to what you want. You probably won't know that right away, so just leave it to automatic for now, and all this stuff can be adjusted in the properties later on after the profile view is created. So I'm going to leave it at automatic. I'm going to hit next. Make sure that all three of these are check marked. This is going to display all three profile lines on the grid. It will have your centerline profile and your two bank profiles so that you can get your low bank from it. Just make sure they're all check marked. Hit next. And then you get to a band set, which if you have this set up properly, when you go ahead and design the grass waterway, it'll give you a cut depth. It'll give you a fill depth. Depending on what the design profile is. I'm not going to go through that today. Maybe we can do this later on in more of an advanced session, or if you have the right style set up, you can do this as well. But it's fairly nice if you have this done to where at least at every, say 100-foot station, it'll tell you the cut depth or the fill depth for the grass waterway. Hit next again, and if you would have done that, then you would have had other options to fill in here for the cut hatch area. Now I'm not too familiar with this box. I've never used it, so maybe if there's someone out there in this audience can explain it or uses it, then we can talk about it. But for now, we won't do that. The next step is just to hit the Create Profile View button, and then select an area in the model space for the profile view to go. Okay, it just drew this nice gridded box. And it looks like this because this is how I have the style set up. And yours may be different, and maybe you like this one and you want to use it. That's fine. But this is how I have it set up. And if I zoom in here on the three profile lines, the green is my center line. And I forget which is which. This red and this orange are maybe less red on your screen. One of them's left and one of them's right. If I click one of them, say this top one, it'll tell me up here in the top right that that's 20. And it looks like negative 20, but actually if I did select it and select the other one, that one will say negative 20. So this one here that says negative 20 is the left bank, and the other one is the right bank. But you don't really need to know that. All you really need to know to design your grass waterway profile is which one's lower than the other one, and that's the one you want to set your design profile grade to. So that's what it looks like after I have the profiles done and the profile view created. Now I'm going to go through this again real quickly, and I'm going to skip some steps like I said in the beginning to show you how fast this really goes. I went ahead and created the profile, but I'm going to go through it again. Okay, these three are already created. Now before I hit OK, and it took me to the model space and I had to go push the button in the ribbon, I can just hit Draw and Profile View instead. And I'm not going to go through all these pages because I didn't have to change anything, and just hit Create Profile View. So because I have all these defaults already set up, it's just that simple. Okay. The last step to this whole process, and there's not a lot to this if you're going through the guidelines, but there will be, this is probably where you'll spend most of your time through this part of the process, because you may have to keep adjusting based on what your design is. So we'll go ahead and get started with it. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to draw the design profile for the center line of the proposed grass waterway. To do that, we'll go up to the ribbon and we'll select Profile again. And instead of Create Surface Profile, this time we'll select Create Profile Creation Tools. Sorry for the tooltips, they keep popping up, but I want the Profile Creation Tools. Click it. And I have to select the profile view that I just created, which is just the box of this grid. And you'll get this dialog box that pops up. I'm going to go ahead and name it. I'll name it, I'll call it Design Grade. For profile style, I did not, well, I guess I do have it OD and RDS WR set up, but I'm going to go ahead and stick to just the standard design profile that's defaulted in CAD. and I'm going to set the profile label set to complete label set. And I'll explain what that is when they show up on the grid, but I'll just leave it to that for now. Hit OK, and I got this box popped up here in the top left of my screen, and it says Profile Layout Tools. There's a lot of tools you can use here, and I am not familiar with all, well, I should say I don't know any of them except for one, and it's the one I need, luckily. So that one that I use for this part of the process is the far left one, and if you hover over it, it'll say Draw Tangents Without Curves, but if you pick this drop-down arrow, there's several, or four, I guess you could choose from, and the one we want is just to draw tangents. We don't want any curves or anything like that, so we'll just pick the Draw Tangents one. Okay. It's asking me at the bottom in the command line to specify the start point. Always start at the outlet, okay? And for this, you may want to turn your snap on. So let's turn intersection on, and let's turn nearest on. It may be two good ones to have. Okay, so let's zoom into the outlet at the very bottom of this profile. This green line, like I said before, is the center line of your waterway, or it's the ground surface to where the center line of your waterway is going to go. So it's not necessarily the bottom of your waterway, it's just the ground surface that exists there right now. So I know this point down here is where the flow line of the culvert is. So I know that I want the bottom of the waterway to be that elevation. So I'm going to go ahead and click my first starting point right there. And for this particular waterway, I've calculated that it needs to be roughly 1.2 foot deep. Now, this part here is kind of where you have to do some, call it guesstimation. I did a pre-design. I think it's going to be 1.2 feet. It may end up being 1.4, 1.8, whatever it might be. It might be shallower. But that 1.2 is really going to help me start out where I draw this first profile grade line. And so what I want to do is I want to look at each station, say every 100 foot or so, and take the low bank and go 1.2 feet below that. And if I did that one here, I'd be roughly down here at 1088. Now, I'm not going to click here. You could do that. You could click here. You could click every 100 foot or so. The problem is if I do that, for instance, if I do this and I click here and then I click up here at this 100 foot, that's okay. The problem is when you're done drawing this grade, right there you have 3 different grade breaks, and that's within 300 feet. And typically when we do grass waterways, we're not going to have that many grade breaks in the design. We want to have as few grade breaks as possible while still having a good design. Now, if that means you have one continuous grade, that's great. It doesn't usually work out that way. You need normally at least 2, sometimes more, depending on the length of the waterway and the situation you're in. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this and start over. What I usually do before I draw that line is I'll come up here and I'll draw a circle. So I'll start at the outlet and I'll draw a circle right there because I know that's where I want to start my profile view. Okay, so I've just drew that circle. And I'm going to copy that circle and at every station at 100 foot, I'm going to find approximately where 1.2 foot below the low bank is. And I'm going to paste this circle there by just using the copy command. And I'm just going to go along at every 100 foot, approximately where 1.2 foot is, and put a circle there. I apologize, this may take a little bit for me to get through the whole waterway, but it's better to do it now so that you can see what the end product looks like. And I'm just guesstimating. I'm not getting it exactly perfect, which is something you should consider because you're going to have to adjust it in the end anyhow. Very rarely do you get a perfect straight line off this very starting point. So let's go ahead and keep putting my circles, and you could do dots, you could do lines, whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be circles, but this is typically what I do. Okay, now in this case over here, the two low banks are higher than my grade line and almost to the point to where I don't have to go 1.2 foot below the low bank. It may be somewhere down here, but it's closer to the existing ground, which is good because I have to daylight my top end of the grass waterway. And to do that, I'm going to zoom in to where the existing ground is and put my last circle. Okay, now if I zoom out of this, you should see below the grade line all these circles. Doesn't tell you much right now, but what it does is it helps you out when you draw the profile line how high it needs to be and how many grade breaks you might need. So again, we're going to go back and we're going to draw the design grade by clicking the profile, go down to Profile Creation Tools, select the profile view, and name it. We're going to call it design grade again. Oop, I don't want to type in again. Hit OK. Click this button over here, which is Draw Tangents Without Curves, and start at the outlet. So I know I'm going to start there, right there. Okay. Now, since I don't want to grade break at every 100 foot, I extend my line without clicking anything, and I kind of judge where this blue line is compared to the circles, if it's too high or too low. And it looks to me like I maybe want to break grade right here based on where the circles are. And if I kind of judge this the same way, it looks like maybe I want to break grade maybe somewhere right in here. And my final last grade break is going to be at the outlet. Or, sorry, not at the outlet, at the top end of the grass waterway. And make sure I click to hit the ground line. Okay, now hit Escape or hit Enter and get rid of your toolbox and zoom out. Now it'll have on here each location for the grade break. It'll have the station at which it occurs. For instance, this grade break right here says station 8+55. It'll have the elevation at which it occurs. Okay, so it'll have all that information on all the grade breaks. It also has the grade slope in percentage between each grade break. So you can see my bottom here, down here is 0.78% grade. This top one is 1.2% grade. Or sorry, the middle one's 1.2% grade. And the top one is, what does that say? Roughly 2.6% grade. Okay. Now, for ease of laying out in the field, you're probably not going to want to leave this at station 8+55.73. Okay, that's getting a little too specific. So maybe I want to change this to 8+50 or something close to it, which I can do. I guess hold on a second here. Okay, so to adjust where these points are, where these grade breaks are, all I have to do is select the profile line I just drew. And you'll see at each grade break point, there's these three triangles. I'll zoom in a little bit. Okay. The middle triangle is the point that you can grab. If I click it here, I can take this point anywhere on the map and change it, and it'll change the grades automatically and the grade locations automatically. Or if I didn't want to change the grade of, say, this one here, I wanted to leave this at 2.58%, I can go ahead and click this bottom triangle, and anywhere I draw this, now it won't go, if I turn the snap off, it won't go left or right. It'll only go parallel to where this top line is going, okay? So I can keep drawing it down. It doesn't matter where I move my cursor, it will only go straight off of that line. And what that will do, For instance, if I draw the point right here, let me turn my snap back on so I can hit the line. If I want to change grade at this point right there, I still have that 2.58% that I had before. It just changed the bottom grade. And I could do the same thing on the other side. For instance, this is 0.95% right now. If I picked the other triangle and I moved it, it would keep that grade constant, but it would change the grade of the upper one. Okay? And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to leave this one here. Because what I did when I snapped to this vertical line right now, now it's telling me, okay, I have a grade break at station 800, and it gives the elevation at which that grade break should occur. That's a little easier to lay out in the field. It's a little easier for the contractor to understand. And you can do that with all these points. You can move this one. Looks to me like it's already right on a station. Yeah, it's on station 500. Your first point's at station 0 plus 0, 0. And that's that. And you can adjust this too to where you get the grades. Like, for instance, if you don't want to give your contractor hundredths and you want to get it in tenths, you can adjust this likewise to get it in tenths. That's it for creating your profile. Now, that doesn't mean you're done. You're going to have to next use these grades that are on this line and plug them into the Engineering Field Tools program, which we should all be using to design grass waterways now. If you're not, you're going to get written up in your QAR, just telling you. But you should plug these grades into your Engineering Field Tools program, and along with your watershed area, or the total flow, I guess, coming through here, and go ahead and do a pre-design on your grass waterway. So set your width to, say, 40 foot and figure out what the depth is. If you do that and you figure out, well, hey, based on this situation, I need to have a depth of 1.5 instead of 1.2, what you're going to have to do is kind of go through here and see if you have enough depth to cover your 1.5 foot depth. Because if you don't, then the top banks of your grass waterway are going to be above the natural ground line, and you won't be able to get overland flow into your grass waterway. So you want to try to keep your banks at the same elevation as the current ground level. And that's why you're using these two bank offsets to be able to judge. Am I 1.5 foot below these two banks? If I am, then I can just daylight the sides of my grass waterway and all the surface water will flow into it. Okay? So that's important. So you're probably going to have to do it after you do that and you say, hey, it needs to be 1.5 foot, you're probably going to have to adjust where this profile is. You might have to move this one a little bit deeper. And then all of a sudden you just see that change the grade on both of these. So now what do you got to do? You got to go back to Engineering Field Tools, plug in these new grades, and see if it changed the depth of your waterway significantly. Okay? So it's kind of going a back and forth, sort of a several step method of iteration. Hopefully you only have to do this once or twice, and it's not too hard. Luckily, Engineering Field Tools, you just plug in the numbers and it gives you the new depth. So this makes it fairly simple. In the old method, you would have to basically do this by hand. You'll have to calculate the slopes by hand. So this makes it fairly easy. You can get your grades automatically, you can plug it into EFT automatically, and you can kind of get a good feel for what your grass waterway needs to be. Make sure I didn't miss anything here before I do this again.
Hey, Justin?
Yeah.
I'll add something to that, but if you pull your profile creation toolbar back up,
yep,
you can click on the profile there.
Okay.
No. I'm sorry. Yes, click on that and then hit your geometry editor.
Okay. There we go.
The two buttons to the left, the one with the X in it, and the one with the arrows going up and down, and left and right, can be used to add or delete vertexes in your line too. So there's kind of multiple ways to skin a cat, but you don't have to worry so much, like I think you were saying, about getting that profile perfect. If you want to draw a spot every 100 feet and then start that way and then go and delete vertexes as you see very little change and make it, you can do that. You can add to freely move a vertex in any direction, that move PVI, so that you can get things maybe lined up to nice even numbers, so that, like you said, they're not at station 8 plus 55. You can slide it over to 8 plus 50 and keep the grades relatively the same, or the elevation the same. So both of those can be used to manipulate your profile line as well.
That's a good point. Like I said, I'm not too experienced with it, so you're saying I can go ahead and click this delete PVI, and I can select a triangle.
Yep.
I zoom in and get it. Well, I got to change my snap. Make sure I get the right snaps. Well, I should have it. Okay, so there, it just deleted that.
Yep. And now the one
point, and now it's straight line.
Yep, and the one to the left of that with the orange star thing, that'll add one too. So if you decide I need to break that now, you can just go ahead and snap it right in there and add a vertex.
There we go.
So it's real easy to manipulate the profiles, and for you guys who've been using CAD a long time know that this is like awesome, because the first time, earlier versions of CAD, if you didn't do it right the first time, it was very difficult to make adjustments, and you have to almost start over. But everything happens so on the fly now. It's real easy to play with things, and that probably makes it kind of dangerous, because then you can probably spend an exorbitant amount of time perfecting things too, I guess.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's kind of a back and forth, like he's saying. There's multiple ways to be doing this, and I just learned something today. So hopefully you guys did too. If there's any other ways to do this, I mean, certainly chime in. I can go ahead and run through this process again, Justin, if you'd like me to, or we can open it up for questions or maybe comments. People have other suggestions that may be even more helpful. What do you think?
Sure, we can. Are there any questions? Feel free to type them in or raise your hand. Questions on anything that he ran through, comments, suggestions, ideas, different ways of doing things. Feel free. We want to keep this relatively open. Just go ahead and type them in the question or the chat bar.
The next step then, which will be the next webinar or two, will be to physically cut in your shape of your grass waterway. After you have it designed, it's 40 foot wide, 1.5 foot deep. You'll physically cut it into the surface using this grade. So all this will fall in line. We just haven't got to that point yet. So if this kind of seems kind of odd, okay, well, this didn't give me a cross section yet. Well, we're not there yet. So hopefully this will at least give you a good idea how to do a profile. So, and you can use this process, if maybe not for grass waterways, you could use it for, say, a subsurface drainage tile as well. So there's multiple things you can be doing.
It works for fills as well. Any type of roadway or any linear project that requires a horizontal alignment and a vertical profile. Well, I don't have any questions at this point, and we're getting close to about our 45 to 60 minute time frame. So I hope this is working, doing these sort of short blasts. We'll probably follow this up with what next on adding in cross sections, I would imagine, is our next step. And we also want to go back to the, go ahead.
Corridors are probably our next step. I don't know how deep we'll get into it. We may have to break that one into two. It might be so big.
Sure, and that'll all be part of the I guess I'll call that part of the cross-section process, but to develop the corridor.
Yeah.
Then we'll also throw one in to go way back to the beginning, and just sort of a very basics for maybe our very beginning users, and then we'll just kind of keep at this as much as we can fit in and as much as there's need. If you have any topics once we get through these basics, please let me know. or Justin McBride too, and we'll see what we can do. We're also looking for guest presenters for those of you that are a little bit more experienced than we are, have some ideas. I think we can make this work remotely to have just about anyone be able to give some instruction.
The last thing I'll kind of put in here that I kind of missed talking about was that even though we already have a grade drawn and the profile is drawn and everything, we can still adjust the alignment. Okay, so if I select the alignment on the surface and I move this triangle point and say I wanted it to go over here for some reason, it does that. Now you just saw it changed some things over here on a grade, and what it changed has this sort of little orange circle with an eye in it, and all that's doing is saying, hey, something changed with the alignment, so it changed this profile because of it. And at first I thought this was an error and I couldn't figure out how to get rid of it, but it's actually fairly simple. Whoops. All you need to do is select your profile line that you drew, and up here in the ribbon it will say horizontal changes. Those are just notifications to say, hey, something changed, be aware of it. And to get rid of those, I just click that and check mark dismiss all notifications, and they're gone. So that was my last thing. You can still move the alignment, and even once we build a corridor, you can still move the alignment. So keep that in mind that you might not need to get it perfect at the first step, like we've said this several times before. Just get it close to where you think it is, and you can fine-tune it later on in the process. So that was my last little point, Justin.
Okay. Well, I think we're about wrapping up. I'll give a last call here for any questions or comments. I don't have any hands raised or anything typed in. Justin, you must have done a bang-up job there today.
I think I'm going to start calling on people. They got to be careful. I might put some people on the spot.
We can do that. I will also say, if you're willing to or want to share any thoughts or comments or feedback, please feel free to email me afterwards. We didn't put together a survey this time, but we're certainly as we continue to grow this concept, we want thoughts and feedbacks and how things went or any ideas. So it's always appreciated. Okay, well, thank you very much, everybody. Thanks, Justin, for going through this and putting it together. Like I said, we'll put something out probably in another several weeks with the next steps and keep progressing through. And in the meantime, everybody enjoy the rest of your Friday. Have a good weekend, good Memorial Day, and we'll be talking to everyone soon.
Thank you.